When it comes to horror anthologies, people often turn to stuff like VHS, Creepshow, Twilight Zone, etc. But you know what? There's tons of crazy horror movies waiting to be discovered. Even countries like India are producing breathtaking horror movies. For instance, Tumbbad. And then there's South Korea and Japan, who deliver great masterpieces. But pardon me, I digress. So coming back to horror anthologies, in this video, we will explore the top 13 underrated anthology movies that are actually worth your while. Let's begin, shall we? But before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. 1. Tale of Tales. 2015. Inspired from the fairy tales by Italian poet Giambattista Basile, titled Pentamerone, the movie might lack magic in the immediate flashy sense, but its strange spell is altogether seductive and special. And the secret to it all is that the film deals with everything with deadpan seriousness. I mean, if you'll watch it, you'll know what I'm talking about. But for now, let's check out what actually happens in the 3 anthology stories in Tale of Tales. The Enchanted Doe. In the kingdom of Longtrellis, the queen is desperate for a child. A necromancer tells her to eat a sea dragon's heart cooked by a virgin, but this comes with a deadly price. The king slays the dragon but dies from his wounds, and the queen gives birth to Elias. Meanwhile, the cook also gives birth to Jonah. The boys, who look identical, become inseparable, much to the queen's frustration. When the queen tries to kill Jonah, he escapes, but not before leaving a sign for Elias tied to a tree root. When the water turns bloody, Elias rushes to find him, only to find Jonah injured in a cave. Well, he had been attacked by a monster. The creature wounds Jonah, but spares Elias, who kills the monster. If it's too much, Elias is the prince. Anyway, Elias rescues Jonah and brings him back to safety. And you know what happened to the monster? Well, its carcass transforms into the queen. Yep, that's the price the queen and the king had to pay to bear a child. The Flayed Old Lady. The king of Strongcliff is drawn to a beautiful singing voice and courts the unseen woman. Unbeknownst to him, it belongs to Dora, one of 2 elderly sisters. Dora agrees to spend the night with him in darkness, but when he sees her in the morning, he is horrified and throws her out of a window. People like him are the reason hell exists. Anyway, poor Dora. She survives, and a witch magically restores her youth. The king meets the now young Dora again, falls in love with her, and even goes on to make her his queen. Dora's jealous sister, Emma, asks how she managed the transformation, to which Dora says that she was flayed. Of course, this wasn't exactly true, but Emma wants to try it nonetheless. The Flea. The king of High Hills raises a flea that grows to an enormous size. When it dies, he skins it and offers his daughter Violet as a bride to whoever can guess what the creature is. An ogre correctly identifies it, and Violet is forced to marry him. Trapped in the ogre's cave, Violet escapes with help from a family of acrobats, but the ogre kills them. Violet then tricks the ogre and slits his throat. Returning to the castle, she confronts her father, who falls to his knees in regret. Violet is crowned queen, while Dora from the previous story, whose beauty fades, slips away unnoticed. Did anyone else feel like the movie was about plastic surgeries and this obsessive frenzy among people to make babies? 2. Body Bags, 1993. Body Bags opens with a creepy coroner introducing 3 body bags to the audience, and the 3 anthologies are basically stories about how each of these ended up at the coroner's. The first 2 are directed by John Carpenter, and the last one by Tobe Hooper. The Gas Station. In John Carpenter's thriller, Anne, a young college student, begins her first overnight shift at a gas station in Haddonfield, Illinois. And if you're remotely a John Carpenter or Michael Myers fan, you'd know that Michael began his outstanding serial killing journey here at Haddonfield. Anyway, the previous worker, Bill, warns her about an escaped serial killer and tells her to keep the booth locked at all times. Throughout the night, she grows increasingly anxious as she interacts with late-night customers. After one customer forgets his credit card, Anne locks herself out of the booth and experiences a strange transient. When she investigates the men's restroom, she finds a drawing and later discovers the transient's dead body in a garage bay. She realizes that Bill is the escaped murderer who killed the real worker. Anne is chased by the killer. Just as she's about to be killed, the customer returns for his credit card and fights off the maniac, which allows Anne to crush him under a vehicle lift. Hair. Once again a Carpenter short, Hair opens with Richard Coberts, a middle-aged man who is obsessed with his thinning hair, which even becomes the reason for conflict in his relationship with girlfriend Megan. Desperate for a solution, Richard responds to a TV ad offering a miracle hair transplant. Dr. Locke, a shady specialist, promises to fix his problem. The next morning, Richard is thrilled to wake up with a full head of hair, but his joy quickly turns to horror as hair starts growing uncontrollably all over his body. Worse, the hairs are alive, like tiny little serpents. Richard confronts Dr. Locke, only to learn that the doctor and his staff are aliens who implant these living hairs into humans as part of a plan to consume and spread their alien essence. Poor Richard, he dies in a bizarre accident. In this Tobe Hooper-directed thriller, Brent Matthews, a struggling minor league baseball player, faces a life-altering car accident that leaves him without his right eye. Desperate to save his career, he agrees to an experimental surgery to receive an eye transplant from a deceased donor. After the surgery, Brent starts seeing terrifying visions and has disturbing dreams of murdering women. He tracks down the doctor, only to learn the eye belonged to John Randall, a recently executed serial killer. As Brent feels the killer's spirit taking over his body, he returns home, telling his wife Kathy about the danger. When the killer's influence grows and threatens Kathy, Brent manages to regain control just long enough to stab his own eye with garden scissors. And this severs the link to the killer, but he ultimately bleeds to death. And after these stories are told, we go back to the coroner, who is actually one of the cadavers present, a John Doe, and he gets into his own body bag after hearing two officers coming in to examine his dead body. 3. Nightmares. Nightmares stars greats like Lance Henriksen and Christina Rains, and is definitely one of the better anthology movies as far as overall quality is concerned. But you may still feel that out of the 4, 2 stories work and 2 don't. I'll let you figure out which are which. In the first story, titled Terror in Topanga, a serial killer named William Glazier is on the loose after escaping a mental institution. Naturally, this leaves the town on edge. Meanwhile, Lisa, a housewife with a cigarette habit, sneaks out for a smoke run despite warnings from her husband and the news. On her way back, she stops at a gas station where the attendant's suspicious behavior terrifies her. The twist comes when the attendant reveals he's not the threat. Glazier was hiding in her back seat all along. After the close call, Lisa decides cigarettes aren't worth it and throws her pack away. The Bishop of Battle. In this second story, JJ, a talented but obsessed gamer, hustles arcade players for money. Why? Well, he's hell-bent on beating the mysterious 13th level of a notoriously difficult video game called The Bishop of Battle. Despite warnings from friends and concern from his parents, JJ sneaks out one night to break into the arcade after hours and finally reaches level 13. Suddenly, the game explodes into reality. 3D enemies fly out of the machine and turn JJ's life, well, into a chaotic, laser-filled nightmare to say the least. The next morning, JJ's family and friend find him trapped inside the game, transformed into a character on the screen. The Benediction. Here, Father Frank McLeod, a Catholic priest, is struggling with a crisis of faith after witnessing the tragic death of a young boy. Plagued by nightmares of snakes and visions of anarchy, Frank resigns from his parish and goes in search of meaning. As he drives away, a black truck starts tailing him, and curiously enough, this nearly causes several accidents. Flashbacks reveal that Father McLeod could have averted the kid's death. You see, he was torn between saving the child's life or administering last rites. Anyway, the truck continues its relentless pursuit and forces Frank off the road multiple times. In a final, intense chase, it's revealed that the truck is driven by Satan himself. With nowhere to run, Frank throws holy water at the truck, which vaporizes it instantly. Emergency responders arrive, but find no trace of the truck. Reinvigorated by this supernatural encounter, Frank regains his faith and requests to be taken back to his parish hospital, ready to resume his spiritual path. Night of the Rat. This one is the final part of the anthology. So, on a stormy night, Claire Houston hears noises in the attic. She suspects rats, but her husband Stephen does not quite buy the idea. Determined, Claire looks for an exterminator, but Stephen suggests using mousetraps instead. Strange stuff soon escalates. kitchen items mysteriously fall, and their cat Rosie is found dead. Later, their daughter Brooke's toys are shredded, and only one stuffed toy is untouched. Any guesses? Well, a stuffed rat. Claire finally hires Mel Kiefer, an exterminator, who identifies the creature as a legendary devil rodent, a giant intelligent rat from 17th century Europe. Despite Steven's skepticism, Chaos eventually makes the Houston house its home. The rat telepathically communicates with Brooke and reveals that it's a mother searching for its dead baby. Steven retrieves the baby rat from the trash and places it by the window. The devil rodent takes her offspring and vanishes, leaving the terrified family relieved but uncertain of where the creature will go next. 4. Tube Tales, 1999. Tube Tales is a 1999 British anthology film composed of 9 short stories. Each of these stories captures a unique experience on the London Underground. The film features directorial debuts by Ewan McGregor and Jude Law, along with a small role for Simon Pegg. It's based on real-life stories submitted to Time Out magazine, all filmed on the London Underground. In Mr. Cool, a man tries to impress a girl, but instead gets stuck on a train going nowhere, much to his embarrassment. Horny shows a flirtation between a young woman and a businessman under Liverpool Street, adding some heat to the cold commute. Grasshopper is about 2 inspectors who mistakenly target a man they suspect of dodging fares, but it turns out they've got the wrong person in this comedic mix-up. My Father the Liar, directed by Bob Hoskins, follows a father who lies to his son after witnessing a troubling incident. In Bone, a musician creates an elaborate fantasy about the owner of a lost travel card, while Mouth draws a carriage's attention to a glamorous woman who doesn't quite meet everyone's expectations. A Bird in the Hand, Jude Law's directorial debut, sees a couple discussing the fate of a bird trapped on the underground, only for an elderly man to set it free. Rosebud is an emotional tale of a mother desperately searching for her lost daughter, who is meanwhile exploring a surreal wonderland. Finally, Steal Away centers on 2 thieves who steal a briefcase of money, only to end up on a mysterious train where strange, almost spiritual stuff begins to happen. They leave the money behind and find only one of their tickets works as they try to exit, leaving their fate uncertain. Oh, and Simon Pegg debuted in this one. Can you believe it? 5. The Dark Tapes, 2017. The Dark Tapes is an anthology of short horror films, but is built into a frame narrative which acts as its own short horror film. I'll explore the short films first, and then dive into the frame narrative part. The Hunters and the Hunted. David and Karen move into a new house and start hearing strange noises. Objects move on their own, and David is attacked by an invisible force, which even leaves a handprint. They call in paranormal investigators, who set up equipment to record the phenomena. Overnight, more strange things happen, stuff like a girl appearing in the footage. The investigators learn that David and Karen's daughter, Ashen, had died, and they perform a seance, which confirms her presence. However, things take a pretty dank twist when the investigators are killed. It's revealed that David and Karen are serial killers, with Ashen making her first kill. This was totally one of the craziest twists I've seen in an anthology. Cam Girls. Caitlin, a cam girl, chats with her friend about experiencing blackouts and strange behavior after nights out with her girlfriend Cindy. He suggests drinking less, but shit was about to go loose and alcohol wasn't the problem. So during a special cam session, Cindy asks Caitlin to make their chosen viewer, Gary, cut himself. Caitlin flirts with Gary and convinces him to slice his hand, then his throat. After his death, it's revealed Caitlin and Cindy are vampires. They stand over Gary's body, and Cindy, finally satisfied, joins Caitlin in feasting on him. The screen fades to black as they feed. Told you alcohol wasn't the problem, and Caitlin wasn't having the blackouts because of the bloody martini she was drinking. Amanda's revenge. Amanda, after being abducted for 4 months, plans revenge on her mysterious captors. Flashback to a party. Her friends Ryan and Josh rescue her from would-be molesters. The next morning, Amanda wakes up in a trance, and the house shakes, but no earthquake is reported. A month later, Amanda asks her friends to watch her sleep, but they all pass out. Pretty mysterious. Moving on, Amanda wakes up screaming and says that her plan failed. Amanda later reveals to Ryan that she has telekinetic powers and believes she's being transported to another dimension at night. She sets traps and records with non-electric devices at a secluded cabin. That night, an entity appears and is killed by one of Amanda's traps. A month later, everything seems calm, but Ryan's room suddenly starts shaking during a video call. To Catch a Demon, frame narrative. Sam and Marie arrive at their theater to find blood and chaos and assume that their friend is responsible. Meanwhile, Dr. Martin Callahan and his student Nicole believe night terrors are caused by trans-dimensional entities, aka demons, who are only visible during REM sleep. They perform an experiment using a high-speed camera and catch brief images of an entity. During a second attempt with radiation, the entity attacks Martin, using him to communicate with Nicole and Jason. Both lose consciousness. Upon waking, Martin reveals they're trapped in a time dilation bubble, invisible to the outside world. Jason tries retrieving the camera, but gets caught between dimensions and dies. Martin and Nicole attempt a final experiment with more radiation. Martin admits he's already dead in the other dimension, and Nicole applies the dose, then faints. She later awakens alone and finds the world frozen in time. She realizes that she's expanded the time dilation bubble, and she leaves just as Sam and Marie enter the theater, unaware of whatever had transpired. 6. Phobia, 2008. This Thai film, pronounced as Phobia, is another foreign language beauty that people often fail to appreciate in the English-speaking world. It deals with multiple stories surrounding the death of one victim, Phobia. Pin, stuck in her apartment with a broken leg, spends her days texting her boyfriend. The stranger, who can only communicate at night, claims to be trapped in a cramped place for 100 days. After sharing photos, Pin is horrified to see a ghostly face beside her in the image. She discovers that a prince, buried with his cell phone, uses it to reach out to people when lonely. As the ghost approaches, the lights go out, and Pin is attacked and thrown out the window, which leads to her death. Deadly Charm. A nerdy student, Need, is beaten to death by his drug-using classmates after witnessing them take drugs. Pink, a member of the gang, feels guilty but doesn't intervene. Before dying, Need curses his attackers using a deadly charm that involves a photo of a dead person with their eyes open. Soon, the drug addicts start dying mysteriously, with Need's vengeful spirit responsible. Though Pink didn't hurt him directly, Need still targets her for doing nothing to stop the attack. To escape the curse, Pink gouges her own eyes out. The cursed photo used by Need features Pin from the earlier story. The Man in the Middle. 4 friends, Ai, Tur, Shin, and Phuoc, go on a river rafting trip in a remote jungle. While camping, Ai jokes that if he dies, the person who sleeps in the middle will be next. The next day, Ai is thrown from the raft and disappears. After searching in vain, the remaining 3 argue about who will sleep in the middle, spooked by Ai's comment. Later that night, Ai returns, but strange things follow. Eventually, the friends discover their own dead bodies in the river and realize they all drown. Only Ai accepted his death, while the others remained in denial. Flight 224. Flight attendant Pim is secretly involved with Prince Albert of Vernistan. During a charter flight for Princess Sophia, the prince's wife, things take a dark turn when Pim accidentally serves the princess shrimp, triggering a fatal allergic reaction. Pim is tasked with escorting the princess's body back for cremation on a return flight, where the princess's corpse is the only passenger. During the flight, the princess appears to try to escape her shroud, turning the journey into a terrifying ordeal for Pim. When the plane lands, Pim is found dead, lying under the untouched, unshrouded body of Princess Sophia. 7. Campfire Tales, 1997. In the 1950s, Jenny and Eddie are spooked after hearing a radio broadcast about a madman. They leave a viewpoint in a hurry, later finding a hook hanging from their car door. In present day, a group of friends crash in the woods and stumble upon an old church foundation where they tell scary stories to pass the time. Rick and Valerie, newlyweds on their honeymoon, drive through rural Nevada and park their RV despite a local man's warning. After ignoring his advice, the man is killed by unseen creatures. Later, as Rick goes to find a gas station, he discovers the man's body and is attacked, damaging his vocal cords, making it difficult for him to communicate. Meanwhile, Valerie is terrorized by a creature that tries to enter the RV. After fending it off with pepper spray, she passes out. She awakens to see a police officer at the RV, but soon finds Rick's mutilated body hanging from a tree nearby. In the second chilling story, 11-year-old Amanda chats online with a girl named Jessica, who isn't who she claims to be. The night before Amanda's 12th birthday, her parents leave her with her teenage sister Catherine, who sneaks out to meet her boyfriend and leaves Amanda alone. Strange things start happening, and Amanda grows anxious, especially when she can't find her dog. She later feels what she thinks is her dog licking her hand under the bed. But then she reads a message in the mirror. People can lick too, and learns the obvious. You see, Jessica was a man, a sexual predator who posed as young girls to hunt others. The family dog is found dead, and the intruder disappears. In the third story, Scott's motorcycle breaks down, and he seeks shelter at a farmhouse during a rainstorm. Inside, he meets a mute woman named Heather, who communicates by writing on a chalkboard. She invites him to stay the night, but they are disturbed when her father arrives. Scott hears a commotion and discovers 2 bloodied bodies in the kitchen, along with Heather's father throwing a severed head into a well. Heather urges Scott to flee and writes to tell him that the house is haunted. They escape, but the father attacks Scott with an axe. As they ride away, they notice a strange time loop where her father re-enters the house repeatedly. After spending the night under a tree, Scott opens Heather's locket, only to find a photo of them together in old-fashioned clothing. Heather then collapses, and her head falls into his lap. Later, Cliff, Lauren, Eric, and Alex, after telling their stories, head back to the road where Cliff sees paramedics attempting to revive him. The others have already died from their car accident, and as the paramedics clean up, another car approaches, this time with a hook hanging from the window. 8. Dead of Night, 1945. Walter Craig arrives at a cottage in Kent to meet his host, Elliot Foley, who invited him to consult on renovations. Upon entering, Craig recognizes Foley and the other guests, despite never having met them. So how does he recognize these people? Well, because they've all appeared in a recurring dream he's had. Craig becomes increasingly uneasy, convinced something terrible is going to happen. Dr. Von Straten, a psychologist, dismisses his concerns, while the other guests share eerie stories to entertain themselves. Hugh Granger, a race car driver, recounts a strange hospital experience. After an accident, he saw a hearse parked outside with the driver telling him there was just room for one inside. Later, while leaving the hospital, a bus driver gives him the same message. Granger avoids the bus, which then crashes down an embankment. Sally O'Hara shares her tale of attending a Christmas party at a mansion. During a game of hide-and-seek, she hides behind a curtain and discovers a door that leads to a nursery. There, she consoles a crying boy named Francis Kent. Later, she learns Francis had been murdered by his sister years ago. The stories heighten Craig's anxiety as the feeling of impending doom intensifies. Joan Cortland shares another story about giving her husband Peter a mirror for his birthday. After looking into it, Peter begins seeing a strange room, and his behavior changes drastically. Joan discovers that the mirror's previous owner, Francis Etherington, went mad, killed his wife over imagined infidelity, and then took his own life in front of the mirror. Peter, too, accuses Joan of cheating and tries to strangle her, but she manages to break the mirror, which somehow manages to snap Peter back to normal. Next, Foley tells the tale of 2 golfers, George Parrott and Larry Potter, who both fall in love with a woman named Mary. They decide to settle the matter with a round of golf. Parrott cheats to win, and Potter, devastated, drowns himself. However, Potter's ghost returns to haunt Parrott and demands he give up Mary. However, Parrott accidentally causes himself to disappear, which leaves Potter to woo Mary. A pretty dumb ghost, Mr. Parrott. Next, Dr. Von Straten tells the story of ventriloquist Maxwell Frere, whose dummy, Hugo, seems to have a mind of its own. Hugo wants to leave Frere and perform with another ventriloquist, Sylvester Key. Tensions rise, and after a series of violent episodes, Frere kills Key and is arrested. In the asylum, Frere starts speaking in Hugo's voice. Back in the present, Craig strangles Dr. Von Straten in a hallucination and relives the stories told by the guests. He then wakes up in his bedroom to a phone call from Elliot Foley, who invites him to his country home, exactly as the film began. 9. A Christmas Horror Story, 2015. So in here, Dangerous Dan is an alcoholic DJ at Bailey Down who is stuck with a late shift. He keeps hearing troublesome stories coming from a local mall and keeps warning his listeners, asking them to stay away from the mall. And while his music plays, the Anthology horror stories play in between. Dylan, Ben, and Molly break into their school to investigate the murders of 2 students in the basement the previous year. Oh, and just a side note, the school used to be a convent. Their friend Caprice was supposed to join but had to go out of town. Once inside, the 3 of them get locked in the basement. Molly becomes possessed by a ghost, seduces Dylan, and kills him when he refuses her. She later seduces Ben and reveals that the ghost was a pregnant teen named Grace who died after a not-so-careful abortion by the nuns. After Molly is impregnated, the ghost kills Ben and frees Molly. Scott Peters is a police officer traumatized by a past murder case. For some reason, he wants to chop down a Christmas tree in the woods and convince his family, but his wife was still reluctant. During their trip, their son Will wanders off and is later found inside a tree, but he starts acting strangely. Big Earl warns them that Will is actually a changeling. After the changeling kills Scott, Kim takes it to Earl, but he admits he can't help. Kim shoots Earl, accidentally freeing the changelings. The changelings return home, and Will is finally freed from captivity. Caprice and her brother Duncan visit their Aunt Etta with their parents, where they hear a story about Krampus, which frightens Caprice. Duncan breaks a Krampus figurine, angering Etta's caretaker, Gerhardt. After a car accident on the way home, the family realizes they're being hunted by Krampus for their bad behavior. They take refuge in a church, hoping confession will save them, but they're picked off one by one. Caprice survives and returns to Etta's house, where she kills Krampus, who turns back into Gerhardt. Caprice's fury over the events transforms her into Krampus, and she attacks Etta. Santa Claus, while prepping for a hectic Christmas, finds his elves and Mrs. Claus have become zombies after one infected elf dies in a fit of rage. He battles through them all and eventually faces Krampus. Just as he's about to finish Krampus off, the truth is revealed. Santa is actually Norman, a mall Santa who snapped under pressure while working overtime. His delusion made him see regular shoppers as zombies during the Christmas food drive. Before he can kill Krampus, actually the mall manager, Mr. Taylor, the police arrive and shoot Norman, stopping his rampage. Well, this is what good old Dangerous Dan was talking about throughout. 10. Phobia II, 2009. Of course, this one's a sequel to Phobia and has been dissected into 5 different movies. Novice. Pei, a rebellious 14-year-old, often throws rocks at passing cars to loot them. One day, he accidentally kills his father. To hide him, Pei's mother sends him to a remote temple where he witnesses a ghost-feeding ceremony. One night, breaking monk precepts, he eats the ghost's offering. Haunted by guilt and strange occurrences, Pei decides to leave the monkhood despite warnings from the monks. As he flees, something seems to follow him. His own rocks mysteriously strike him back, and he becomes disfigured. Ultimately, consumed by guilt, Pei transforms into the very ghost he had disturbed. Ward. Artit, a mischievous teenager, fractures his legs in a bike accident and ends up in a hospital. He shares a room with an old comatose shaman whose life support is set to be turned off the next day. Throughout the night, Artit witnesses strange things like disappearing food and eerie visions. Despite begging to be moved, an old nurse forces him to stay by sedating him. Later, Artit is awakened by the shaman, performing dark rituals on him, transferring his soul into Artit's body. The next morning, hospital staff, who are the shaman's followers, bow to Artit, confirming the soul transfer's success. Backpackers. In Backpackers, 2 Japanese travelers, a boy and a girl, hitchhike through the Thai countryside. Eventually, they get picked up by a rough truck driver and his assistant, Joy. Suspicious phone calls and loud banging from the truck's cargo area hint at something suspicious. The travelers soon realize they're trapped when the driver threatens them at gunpoint. Inside the truck are dead bodies, victims of a failed drug smuggling operation. As the bodies reanimate into zombies, chaos ensues. The Japanese boy is killed, and after a series of events, Joy and the girl are left fleeing for their lives. The girl ultimately shoots Joy, misunderstanding his intentions, but the zombie boy they tried to protect kills her, running maniacally towards a market. Salvage. Nooch, a car dealer, profits from refurbishing wrecked vehicles involved in fatal accidents and selling them to unsuspecting buyers. One evening, she discovers her son Toi is missing. As she searches for him, she's haunted by terrifying visions of accident victims tied to the cars she sold, including a mutilated vendor and a boy trapped in a car wheel. Locked inside one of the haunted cars, Nooch sees death by fire. After escaping, she finds all her cars have reverted to their wrecked states. In a heart-wrenching discovery, she finds her son's burnt body in the engine of her own car. In the end, Tur, Puek, Shin, and Ai are the crew of a ghost movie, Alone 2. During filmmaking, their actress Kate, playing the ghost, collapses and is rushed to the hospital, where Ai is told she's died. Assuming they need to change the ending, the crew is shocked when Kate returns to the set, seemingly alive, and insists on finishing the movie. Shin, confused after getting a call confirming Kate's death, tells the crew, and they nervously decide to shoot the final scene. When strange things begin happening, including the power going out and Kate's eerie behavior, the crew panics and flees. They later pick up Ai, who clarifies that he's alive and narrowly escaped a car crash. Kate soon appears and reveals that the hospital mix-up occurred because of twin doctors, leading to confusion about her death. As they try to return Kate to the hospital, Marcia, driving sleepily, crashes into them, ending their chaotic night. 11. XX 2017. The Box. While on a train with his mother, young Danny sees an old man with a red box. After looking inside, Danny suddenly refuses to eat. Concerned, his parents take him to the doctor, who reveals Danny has lost weight. Soon, Danny's sister Jenny also stops eating, followed by their father Robert after Danny whispers something to him. Susan, haunted by a dream of her family eating her, later sees them eating happily. However, by Christmas, the family is emaciated, and Danny gives Susan a red box. Eventually, all three die of starvation, leaving Susan obsessed with finding the mysterious box again. The birthday party. Mary tries to throw a perfect birthday party for her daughter Lucy, but finds her husband David dead in his office. Instead of calling 911, she spends the day panicking and hiding his body from Lucy, the nanny, and a nosy neighbor. Mary buys a panda costume, hides the body inside it, and places it at the party. Chaos erupts when the costumed body collapses into the birthday cake, and its head is accidentally removed, revealing David's corpse. The children scream, and the scene ends with the title, The Birthday Party, or The Memory Lucy Suppressed from Her 7th Birthday. Don't Fall. Four friends, Paul, Gretchen, Jess, and Jay, explore the desert and stumble upon an ancient cave painting of an evil spirit. That night, Gretchen is attacked by a creature resembling the spirit from the painting, which takes over her body. The possessed Gretchen kills Paul and Jay, then hunts Jess, who breaks her leg trying to escape. The creature, still wearing Gretchen's skin, descends a cliff to finish Jess off. Her only living son, an unofficial sequel to Rosemary's Baby. A pregnant woman, now calling herself Cora, speaks with a doctor and reveals she's going into hiding. Years later, her rebellious son Andy is turning 18, and his behavior becomes increasingly disturbing. After tearing off a classmate's fingernails, Andy's influence over others alarms Cora. She suspects Andy is transforming into the spawn of Satan, a fear she's harbored since his birth. When Satan arrives to claim him, Andy forces his mother to bow, but Cora pleads with him, refusing to give him up. Andy chooses his mother over his dark fate, and the two die together under Satan's attack. 12. Deadtime Stories, 1986. Uncle Mike is babysitting little Brian, who insists on hearing a fairy tale before bed. In Peter and the Witches, Peter, raised by witches, is tasked with finding a girl to sacrifice in order to resurrect their dead sister. But Peter falls for Miranda, the chosen sacrifice, and decides to run away with her instead. In Little Red Running Hood, Rachel goes jogging to deliver meds to her grandma, unaware that Willie, who needs those meds to prevent a werewolf transformation, is racing to Grandma's house too. Finally, in Goldilocks and the Three Bears, a psychic Goldilocks accidentally kills all her romantic romantic partners and stores their bodies in an abandoned house. Unfortunately, it's the home of the criminally insane Bear family, who've just escaped from the asylum. Chaos ensues when they return to find Goldie living in their hideout. The first episode, Peter and the Witches, is a forgettable tale about a boy raised by witches who rebels when they ask him to sacrifice a girl. The story is thin and fizzles out at the end, although it features some cool makeup effects, including a resurrection scene reminiscent of Hellraiser. The second episode, Little Red Running Hood, cleverly updates the classic fairy tale. Now, Little Red jogs in red running gear, while the Wolf is a man suffering from lycanthropy, desperate for tranquilizers to prevent his transformation. The prescription mix-up leads to a humorous chase to Grandma's house. The final episode, Goldilocks and the Three Bears, is the weakest. The Bears are a criminal family returning to their cabin, while Goldilocks is a strange character who psychically kills men who try to seduce her. This episode is marred by over-the-top farcical direction and lacks the charm of the previous segments. 13. The ABCs of Death, 2012. Now, this one here quite literally has a horror movie for each of the letters of the alphabet. That's 26 of them spread across 2 hours. Naturally, I won't get into the details for now, but I would definitely recommend you watch this one with your friends and a few chilled ones. So, if you've reached this point of the video, I'm sure you're into anthologies. And what better anthology than the VHS franchise? We've done plenty of videos on that. I suggest you check them out. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone.